In the darkest corner of the Japanese spiritual world lies a gloomy place called Gakido. This realm, far from light and hope, is the eternal home of souls doomed by their greed and selfishness in life. Gakido is an endless wasteland, covered by a thick gray fog that barely lets the cracked and barren ground be seen. Wails and groans of pain are heard everywhere, forming a constant chorus of suffering. Here, the souls of those who in life were driven by greed, gluttony, or extreme selfishness wander restlessly. Their spectral forms float over the wasteland, desperately searching for something that might alleviate their eternal torment. The inhabitants of this hellish realm are known as Gaki, also known as the hungry ghost. These are hungry spirits whose existence is an endless punishment. Their bodies, once robust and full of life, are now little more than walking skeletons. Their bellies are grotesquely swollen, contrasting with their limbs as thin and frail as dry twigs. The most terrifying thing about the Gaki is their faces. Their eyes, sunken in dark sockets, glow with desperation and insatiable longing. Their mouths, always open in a silent scream, reveal throats so narrow that not even a drop of water could pass through them. The suffering of the Gaki goes beyond physical hunger. It is a hunger that consumes their entire being, an emptiness that no earthly food could ever fill. Every moment of their existence is dominated by a voracious desire that can never be satisfied. In this nightmarish realm, time seems not to exist. There is no day or night, only an eternal gloom that envelops everything. The Gaki wander, searching for something that even they cannot define. Sometimes, in desperation, they try to devour stones or drink from mud puddles, only to find that everything turns to ashes in their mouths. It is said that, on certain nights, when the barrier between the world of the living and that of the dead weakens, it is possible to hear the wailing of the Gaki. They are blood-chilling sounds, charged with pain and despair that no living being could ever fully comprehend. Monks and priests often speak of the Gakido in their teachings, using it as an example of what awaits those who live only to satisfy their desires without regard for others. In Japanese folklore, the Gakido and its inhabitants occupy an important place, serving as a metaphor for the dangers of being carried away by the baser desires of human beings. The image of the eternally hungry and suffering Gaki has become a powerful cultural symbol that transcends the religious and spiritual realm. The story begins in a small Japanese village. Surrounded by rice fields and lush forests, lived a man named Hiroshi. His house, the largest in the village, stood atop a hill, looking down disdainfully at the humble dwellings of his neighbors. Hiroshi had not always known wealth. In his youth, he worked hard in the fields, saving every coin he earned. Over time, his fortune grew, but so did his greed. What began as prudence turned into an obsession to accumulate wealth. Villagers remembered how Hiroshi used to become kind and generous. He would share his lunch with hungry children and help the elderly carry their baskets. But those days were long gone. Now, his heart had hardened like the dry earth in summer. Every morning, Hiroshi would leave his house to survey his land. His cold gaze roamed the fields, calculating profit and loss. The workers shrank from his presence, fearful of his wrath if they failed to meet his exacting standards. One afternoon, as he counted his coins, he heard a commotion outside. A group of children were playing near his property. Without a second thought, Hiroshi stormed out, shouting and waving his arms to chase them away. The little ones fled in fright, leaving their wooden toys behind. Hiroshi picked up the abandoned toys and, instead of returning them, threw them into the fire in his home. As the flames consumed the wood, a crooked smile crept across his face. Days passed and Hiroshi's reputation worsened. Mothers used his name to scare naughty children. "If you don't behave, Hiroshi will come for you," they would say in hushed tones. Winter came with all its harshness. Snow covered the fields and the icy wind whistled through the houses. Many families struggled to survive, rationing what little food they had. One particularly cold night, someone knocked on Hiroshi's door. When he opened it, he found an old beggar man covered in rags and shivering with cold. The old man held out his wrinkled hands, begging for some food. Hiroshi looked the old man up and down with contempt. The smell of poverty turned his stomach. Without a word, he slammed the door shut, leaving the beggar in the freezing darkness. From inside, Hiroshi heard the old man's plaintive moans drifting away into the night. For a moment, he felt a pang of guilt, a distant echo of his former self, but he quickly pushed it from his mind, concentrating on the jingle of coins in his pockets. What Hiroshi didn't know was that the beggar was no mere mortal. The gods, concerned about the growing evil in the hearts of men, had sent this spirit to test people's compassion. That night, as Hiroshi slept peacefully in his warm bed, the old beggar succumbed to cold and hunger in a nearby alley. His last breath mingled with the falling snow, carrying with it the verdict on Hiroshi's soul. At dawn, the villagers found the beggar's body. Many wept, regretting not having done more to help him. Others looked toward Hiroshi's house on the hill, knowing that he had been the last to see the old man alive. Hiroshi, oblivious to it all, continued his life of greed and selfishness. But fate had already laid out his path, a path that would take him beyond death, toward an eternal torment he could not even imagine. Death came to Hiroshi one autumn night. His body, once burly and strong, lay cold in his bed. As his relatives mourned his departure, Hiroshi's soul suddenly found itself in a dark and desolate place. It was not the paradise he expected, nor even the hell he feared. It was something worse. The Gakido stretched out before him, a gray and gloomy realm where souls wandered. Hiroshi tried to scream, but no sound came out of his mouth. He looked down at his hands and saw that they had grown bony and thin. His body had transformed into a grotesque caricature of its former self. Hiroshi's belly, once filled with the finest delicacies, was now swollen and misshapen. He felt excruciatingly hungry, as if he hadn't eaten in years. In desperation, he tried to put into his mouth the first thing he could find, a rotten fruit lying on the ground. But as he tried to swallow it, he discovered to his horror that his throat had narrowed so much that no food could pass through. Days, weeks, years, time lost all meaning in the Gakido. Hiroshi wandered restlessly, searching for something, anything to appease the hunger that consumed him. He saw others like him, damned souls who had been selfish in life, now reduced to hungry wraiths. In his eternal wandering, Hiroshi remembered his past life. Every act of selfishness, every time he denied help to someone in need, every feast he enjoyed while others went hungry. These memories haunted him as much as hunger itself. Sometimes, in desperation, Hiroshi thought he saw tables full of food. He would run to them, only to find that, upon touching the food, it would turn to ashes or twisted worms. The water turned into a liquid fire that burned his throat without relieving his thirst. Hiroshi tried to communicate with other Gaki, seeking comfort or help. But he found that they were all trapped in their torment, unable to offer or receive sympathy. He was alone in his suffering, as he had left so many in his life alone. At times, Hiroshi felt he could sense the world of the living. He would see people enjoying family meals, sharing what little they had with their neighbors. These glimpses only added to his torment, making him understand what he had lost because of his greed. Hiroshi's body continued to change. His skin became gray and wrinkled, his eyes sunken into dark sockets. His mouth, once used to taste the finest delicacies, was now filled with sharp teeth that only served to increase his frustration. As time passed in the Gakido, Hiroshi began to understand the nature of his punishment. It was not just physical hunger that tormented him, but a spiritual emptiness he had never noticed in life. He understood that his greed had truly left him empty, and that he was now doomed to feel that emptiness for all eternity. Hiroshi's story spread throughout the region. Buddhist monks, hearing of his fate, saw an opportunity to teach people about the consequences of greed and the importance of compassion. The Gaki, trapped in their eternal torment, are not completely without hope. The Japanese believe that certain rituals and actions can help free the Gaki and allow them to move toward peace. In homes and temples, makeshift altars are set up for the Gaki. Families offer small portions of food and water. These symbolic offerings represent compassion and the desire to alleviate the spirit's hunger. It is believed that by accepting these offerings, the Gaki may find brief relief. The Obon festival, also known as Ulambana, is celebrated in summer in Japan. During this event, ancestors are honored, and it is believed that the Gaki can visit the world of the living. Some families light lanterns and candles to guide the hungry spirits back home. Dances are also performed and food is offered at special altars. Buddhist monks recite mantras and perform prayers on behalf of the Gaki. These sacred words are considered powerful and can help free the spirits from their suffering. Also, it is believed that performing acts of kindness and charity on behalf of the Gaki can influence their fate. Donating food, helping those in need, and practicing compassion are actions that can have a positive impact on tormented spirits. And so, the story of Hiroshi and his transformation into a Gaki had a lasting impact on the community. Generation after generation, people told this story, keeping alive the lesson about the importance of generosity and compassion. This video has been created for the Myth Comics channel. Thank you for joining us for a new story. See you on next time.